So there's many different depictions of cosmology. And the other thing to consider is that other world cosmologies have a very similar diagram of the world cosmic egg, basically. That's what that Yggdrasil is. That YGG is egg in Norse. And so this is based on 9 realms that are, I'm starting to get a sense that they're kind of like bubbles, like in a bubble bath. The way these realms touch each other is you can't really see them. I'm suspecting that they're operating on a different light frequency because of the spectrum of light that we see. And so I don't know how deep you go down the rabbit hole, but I came across information, I think it was last year, about the Saturnian goggles that they used in the military. They were the first night vision goggles, and they can actually see demons in the red color spectrum with these goggles. And then they had to change that color to green.
So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And in his second tour, he was advanced enough in rank, and he was there, I think, 11 or 12 months. And when he was in country at that point, he's always been a field officer and came up in the military through the Korean War and a battlefield commission. And so, the military likes guys like him, and they let him be in charge of a couple of different projects. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle, but it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from Vietnam...
You mean infrared or?
No, ordinary red. Okay, so instead of seeing, when you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. My father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. It created very interesting effects that they could not deal with, that had their troops always use these goggles. Those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And he actually got praise from the military for the way that he dealt with all of this. But the effect was this. A gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles. And only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now. And my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with him, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot. And all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but at an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" And the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. He was reacting to what he had seen. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter. So he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity. So it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters.
So,
that was freaky story, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it makes sense now that, this lower red spectrum of light is part of what we would call hell, and it also coincides with the root chakra. And on another world of woo note, since I became a level 2 practitioner, I have been removing entities from people, and these entities seem to attach right near the navel, which is the access point in which we come into this world. And learning more about this kind of thing, the archons, they're spoken about in Gnostic texts about the archons and how they can influence people's thoughts and interfere with their lives and all of this. So they are dark entities, and they are thought form entities. And I have experienced them even only about 6 years ago. When I was working on Halt and Catch Fire, I was working on set, and we were on location at it was at a office building, and they had called lunch, but I always took my own lunch. And as I'm walking through the video village, all of a sudden this thought form comes into my mind when my eyes land on a backpack that's in a director's chair. And it came into my mind. It said, you want to take that. And I, knowing myself well, I was like, I'm not going to steal somebody's backpack. I'm at work. Anyway, so that I was like shocked and astounded because I had been learning about all this stuff. And I said, this stuff is real and we need to start talking about it. But so with the Yggdrasil cosmology, they have these lower beings that we cannot see. And as you can see on the screen, the Egyptian, Hebrew, you have the Mayan, and all of the South Americas, they say a very similar thing about our cosmology and our world and how the stars are fixed in the firmament. And this was actually in the Encyclopedia Britannica until the 1960s, I believe.
1958, I think it was the last one.
Yeah, I mean, it was not that long ago that it was in Encyclopedia Britannica about the firmament. Yeah, so they're constantly erasing the truth and feeding us a bed of lies. So it's up to us now to go and discover the truth or rediscover it. And so that's why we have, in China and Asia, Islam and all these places, Greece too, same thing. They have a very similar cosmology. And I feel like, as we keep digging up the past, we need to evolve in our consciousness and awareness and try to bring this cosmology back into the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Basically, it sounds like these dark elves we could associate as the archons, the lower level beings, the parasites, whatever you want to call them, that are taking control. Now, if that's true, they wouldn't want anyone to know that the Earth is flat, would they? Because that would sort of prove their model a little bit, wouldn't it? So how do you see these entities? Do you think these are physical entities, or are we looking at
the only way they can have a physical form is through the humans. And so
so
we could go down a long I don't know how deep you want to go into this into how they are acting. Because
as long as you don't say the C word, we'll be right.
Let's just say that they are summoning these things from darkness with the rituals that they're doing.
Yeah,
I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, so I mean, we all know about John Dee back in the 1600s. Basically, was summoning demons. Yeah, and he had drew the entity, and it looked exactly like what we call grey aliens today.
Yeah, so I mean that's where I go. So I'm not afraid to go down all of these paths to find out what the truth is, because I'm a double Aquarius, and I feel like I have got to find all of these connecting points. And so my job of what I'm good at is connecting dots. And as I said in my email to you, I study all these occult books. And when you study these occult books, it starts connecting even more dots as to why things are being done. And so what we have out here in the world is an energy, a Saturnian energy, and it's everywhere in the symbolism. And once you open your eyes, you can't unsee this stuff. Even, so Saturn represents time, and Saturn represents death.
Yeah.
He's the Grim Reaper, and he's also the Sandman. And apparently it's a principality of us as well. If it ends up that you have Saturn in your birth chart, then you have some sort of challenge in your life, or he will either favor you or challenge you. This is the kind of energy that they're relating to Saturn. And he also is known for eating his own children, because there was a prophecy that said that he would be overthrown by one of his own children. And so they associate these with the planets, with Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is known as Zeus, and Saturn is, of course, what it is over there with the rings. And we have Lord of the Rings, which is also a reference to Saturn. The Nike swoop is also a reference to Saturn. So what we're looking at here with all of these different cosmologies from these philosophers, Pythagoras, and some of the other ones that were just previous, these are the planetary influences of these rings, which are also in correlation to not only Yggdrasil, but our physical body. And you could put yourself in the center of these rings, and each ring would represent a characteristic or aspect of yourself. As above, so below, they say. And so in this video is, I go on about how there's different artist depictions of Yggdrasil. And these are very colorful and fun to look at. But I feel like the most important one is the one that has the tree of life, which is the line drawing. If you just keep going forward, the line drawing actually has the different levels laid out, just like the tree of life in Kabbalah. And the Yggdrasil tree is called the tree of life. And in this slide right here, I talk about how those realms are interconnected. They're almost like bubbles in a bubble bath, and they touch their edges. And sometimes they overlap. And also, with all of the strange things that are on the internet, and especially the Can-Am Missing project, which is David Paulides' channel, he has Can-Am Missing with all of the missing persons cases in America and Canada in the national parks. And he only researches the strangest tales, where people are there 1 minute and gone the next. What is happening? I feel like the waves of energy for each of these realms is just like the aurora borealis, and that it's maybe there, an access point maybe there 1 minute and then gone the next. Because this world is much stranger than we could ever imagine. And the tales that come out of the Bermuda Triangle and, all of the devil's triangles around the world are kind of like that. The realms are determined by our evolution or devolution. And again, this goes back to the chakra system in the body, which is also connected to the rainbow bridge of Yggdrasil. The rainbow bridge is the visual light spectrum, the 7 rays. In spiritual realms out here in the world, you will find different people talking about the 7 rays. And they're just talking about the light and the light spectrum and how we operate on these different frequencies. And we have all of the 7 rays within us, which is why we can either go down in our consciousness or go up in our consciousness. And you can feel this on a daily basis sometimes, as you get mad or sad, and then all of a sudden, you win the lottery or something, then you're overjoyed. Yeah, we have all of this capability inside of us.